So, team of the season for Super Rugby 2018. Just before I start, thought about doing this a few different ways. I could have looked at the overall stats for all the players and kind of picked 15 of the best. Decided not to go with that. I could have kind of gone with a everyone's a winner and try to pick one player from each team to make up a team. I probably could have made a pretty decent team. Making sure every team is represented, kind of, everybody gets a prize, but nope, decided not to go with that as well. Because I've been doing these Team of the Week videos since round 1, I've looked at round 1 to round 19, so the whole regular season, and added up which guys appeared most in my Team of the Week, and these are the guys who I've picked for the Team of the Season. There were a few who were kind of tied up for equal appearances. I've had to tie break them either by their performances in the playoffs, if they made the playoffs, or just kind of my own judgment calls. But I will do another video based solely on the stats overall for the season. Not like a Team of the Week, but I'll look at kind of like best guys in certain areas, like who was the battering ram of the competition, or who was the butterfingers. So guys who did really well or really poorly, just on stats overall, not based on anything on Team of the Week or Dream Team. So yeah, this is just my Dream Team. Because it is their appearances based on my dream team for the week, so they could have had 3 good weeks where they appeared in my dream team and the rest of the season were not that good, but hey, them's the breaks. Here we go. First one in the props. Oh, and also remember, this is like a fantasy team, so there are times, like this time, we have 2 tight head props, or perhaps 2 tight head locks, or 3 number 8s, or whatever. It's just general positions. Some guys shift around positions, so it's a bit hard to put them in that one box. So it is like fantasy rugby. It's not position specific. It's just general. Ruan Dreyer is my first guy. Solid scrum all year round for the Lions. He was a big part of that. Did give away a few too many penalties. He averages more than 1 a game. Not that uncommon for props, but obviously it must be a bit of a bugbear for Lions fans. Still, he played a lot more minutes than most people in his position. He played more than an hour a game, which obviously makes you more prone to giving more penalties away because you're out there for more of the time. He scored 2 tries. His tackling stats were pretty good. And like I said, I think in terms of tight head props, he was the top 4 for average minutes played. So he was putting in a good shift pretty much week in, week out. Next, and he appeared in my dream team twice. Not twice, 4 times. Walker Lowe from the Stormers also appeared in my dream team 4 times. I think predominantly towards the start of the season. Another guy who was top 4 in minutes, but he also put on 4 tries, which is the most. I think it's first equal of any prop this season. So try scoring guys are always going to get ahead in my team. I do like guys who score tries, especially props. So Wilco's up there. He averaged 7 tackles a game, which is pretty solid, and like I said, top 4 for minutes. So he was out there a lot. Some people would say too much, perhaps working a bit too hard, maybe getting a bit of burnout at times. But yeah, both these guys had pretty solid seasons overall. Next, and this guy made my dream team 5 times, which I think is the most of anyone on my team. Malcolm Marx is the hooker. For the dream team of the season, he had 12 tries. To put that into context, the next best hooker was Adrian Strauss in terms of tries, who had 5. So, yeah, for hookers, he was on average, number 1 for run meters, number 1 for line breaks, for tackle busts. The guy with the ball is just a machine. I think he leads the competition for ruck and maul turnovers forced, because once he gets over that ball, there's very little going to move him from it. So yeah, he just had a phenomenal season, and hopefully that form continues into the Rugby Championship is all I can say. Next, Sam Whitelock. He was in my dream team 3 times over the regular season. Interesting thing with Sam Whitelock is he is not the top of pretty much any of the stats that I like look at for a lock. Like, he's not the top for line out takes or tackles or any line-out steals, tries. He's not the top of anything, but he is good at virtually everything. So he averaged 11 tackles a game, scored 3 tries. He led the side pretty well, obviously led them to a title. So he's having a good influence on the team, and he's just doing everything well. He plays a lot of minutes every week and seems to show up week in, week out. So yeah, it's a good effort from him. So he's unlike some other guys, and I'll get to one in a minute, who is very good at some things but perhaps lacking in others. He is just the all-round package. And yeah, 3 times in my dream team over the course of the season, like I said. Next, another guy, 3 appearances in the dream team, is Rory Arnold from the Brumbies. He was number 2 in average line-out takes per game with 4.6. Scored 2 tries over the season, averaged 40 run meters a game, which is very impressive for a lock. He was among the top 5 passing locks, so he was getting the ball a fair bit. And there's no stat that can really just kind of indicate how important he is at ruck and maul time, well, especially maul time. When he takes the line-out ball, he's helping set up a maul, or when he is defending an opposition maul, he's trying to swim through with that height of his and really get his hands over the top. So he's very important at that aspect of the Brumbies game. Next, I can't believe the Blues guys made it. If it was going to be a Blues player, it was going to have to be an Ioane brother. It is Akira Ioane. He was in my dream team 4 times over the season. He averaged 5.4 tackle busts a game, which makes him number 1. He averaged number 1 for line breaks for forwards, not including backs, but he was the number 1 forward to get line breaks. Number 2 forward for run meters at 68. So his stats, pretty much all of them with the ball, including 8 tries, are phenomenal. Very good player with the ball. But like I mentioned with Sam Whitelock, he's pretty much good at everything. With Akira, his defensive stats and his handling, not quite as hot. So when he hasn't got the ball, the same numbers are not quite there. If he could combine his numbers with this guy, Luke Whitelock, from the Highlanders, who appeared 4 times in my dream team also, they would be pretty much the perfect loose forward player, because Luke is number 3 in average tackles per game with 14. I think Akira gets less than half of that per game, although admittedly the Highlanders play a type of game which requires more tackling. He scored 2 tries over the season, and among forwards he was one of the top offloading players. So unlike Akira, he's not a guy who can bust that many tackles. It's not really his game, but he has developed that game where he can get a sneaky and sometimes really magic offload away to put somebody else into space. So yeah, good effort from both these guys. They both do what they do, be it work with the ball or without the ball, very, very well. Now the next guy kind of gets into that jack of all trades territory, and I might get a bit of grief about putting Michael Wells in the team of the season ahead of some other pretty big names. But he appeared in my dream team 3 times, averaged over 11 tackles a game, averaged 41 run meters, decent at the line out. He's another guy who is just a jack of all trades. He does everything really well, and then, well, very well, and then every now and again will just put in some decent shift to really put him over the line into the dream team. He very rarely has a disappointing game, but then again, it's harder to get an outstanding game when you're just solid. I should say though, in terms of forwards, he was the number 1 for try assists. So he was in the right place at the right time, helping his team get over the line. So yeah, he's not a real sexy pick. Like, he's not a tackling machine and he's not a tackle busting machine, but he is just a very good all-round player. So yeah, Michael Wells. Next, and scrum half was a really hard pick because there were a lot of guys who all appeared 2 times. One of them was Will Guinea. Kind of gone with him. He only played 8 games, which is about half of what some of the other guys played. So in those 8 games, he appeared in my dream team 2 times. So that's a pretty good conversion rate. And in those 8 games, he had 7 try assists. So he was such a key part when he was playing of what the Rebels were doing. In terms of average, because his totals aren't that good playing only 8 games, but in terms of average performance for scrum halves, he was the number 1 for line break assists, number 1 equal for line breaks, number 1 for tackle busts, number 2 for offloads, number 5 for run meters. So he was just doing everything very well compared to his other number 9s around the scene. And his influence on the team, especially at the start of the season, can't be understated. His kind of understudy, Michael Ruru, did step up to the plate once he had a few games and Guinea was kind of out. But it did take him a little while. So, yeah, I thought Guinea, for his impact, gets a spot here. But like I said, I'll go over some kind of honourable mentions at the end because there were a lot of guys who also could have been in that spot. Next, fly half, I've gone with Nicolas Sanchez from the Jaguares. He's another guy who's not going to be the top guy for a lot of things, but there's one area he was top, and I'll get to that in a sec. So he had 3 tries, 9 try assists, so he was setting up a lot of play, and he had more average possessions per game, so he got the ball in his hands more often than any number 10 playing in Super Rugby this season. So average per game, he had the ball in his hands to make a decision more than anyone else. It just shows you kind of how he is that real linchpin player, and everything kind of goes through him for what the Jaguares are doing. He's going to be a big player they miss next year. How they kind of adapt to that is going to be difficult. But he makes a lot of passes per game, obviously, because he's got the ball so much. His average line breaks per game is the same as Beauden Barrett, which is in pretty good company to be in. He is the second fly half for average line break assists. His kicking was 77%, which is solid without being spectacular. So, overall, Sanchez was just such a key man in that Jaguares team. He is just setting up a lot of stuff for them. 3 times he appeared in my dream team. Next, midfield, Andre Esterhuizen. Now, he's an interesting one because statistically, there are guys who had better seasons than Esterhuizen. But he appeared in my dream team 4 times. So when he had a big game, he had a big game. I guess it's just the rest of the season it was okay. Not bad, but just not as perhaps outstanding as when he really did put in a good shift. So maybe consistency is one thing for him. But I mean, he averaged a line break every other game. 2.7 tackle busts a game is decent for a guy his size. Probably could be a bit more. He was up there for offloads for midfielders. He averaged 55 run meters a game, which is pretty solid. And for every possession, it's pretty much divided 50-50 as to whether he passed it or ran it. So for a number 12, that's probably a good ratio to keep defenders kind of second guessing as to whether he's going to come forward or whether he's going to set somebody else up. So yeah, 4 times in my dream team. But like I said, some of the guys did have better stats than him, and I'll go through them at the end. Next, Nani Laumape from the Hurricanes. He appeared in my dream team 3 times. Tackle bust king, 4.4 tackle busts per game, which was 3rd overall average across the whole comp. 9 tries, which is only behind Rico Ioane in terms of midfielders, although Rico played so many positions this season in terms of out-and-out midfielders. Laumape would be number 1. Averaged 68 run meters, and his defense just got better over and over throughout the season. So perhaps that's kind of a good thing looking forward to All Black selection, because that's a pretty competitive jersey with Sonny Bill and Ryan Crotty kind of in that midfield conversation for 12 as well. So if he can bring his tackle bust game along with some solid D and perhaps a bit more playmaking, then he'll make himself a hard man to leave out of the squad. Outside backs, we got Ben Lamb. Obviously, started the season better than the finish for him. He appeared in the dream team 4 times, 18 games, 16 tries. There was a bit of a try drought towards the end of the season. It looked like he was going to break all kinds of records because everything he was touching was turning to gold at the start of the season. Like I said, kind of dried up a wee bit. Averaged 3.2 tackle busts, 1.6 line breaks, which are all very, very well and good. He was 2nd overall for wingers in terms of line breaks, and 3rd overall. He averaged 70 run meters a game, so he was generally putting in a pretty good shift. But it perhaps is like the All Blacks didn't select him for the June tests, and perhaps they just hadn't seen enough of him, and maybe this is kind of what they were looking for, whether he could keep things up throughout the whole season. Obviously, as he was scoring tries like crazy, teams would have done more to close him down. So, yeah, next season for him is going to be a really interesting watch. Next, Appeared in the Dream Team 3 times, Israel Folau. I kind of gave him a tiebreaker because a lot of guys had 3 times, but he appeared in the playoffs as a Dream Team player as well. So he was 3rd in the average offloads, which kind of makes sense because that's a big part of his game. He scored 11 tries, which was 5th overall. He was 6th overall for average run meters with 94. And at least in the first half of the season, he was a really key player. And I mean, for the whole season, he's always going to be a key player for what the Waratahs do. But they were using him in the air so smartly at the start of the season. They played him at the wing a few times. So, yeah, he just has a big impact on everything the Waratahs do. And, yeah, he's a very classy player. Lastly, I've gone with Solomon Alemalo from the Chiefs. It was a hard pick. It was just kind of my thoughts as to why I picked him ahead of some of the other guys who also appeared 3 times in my Dream Team. Mainly because of his run meters. He was 3rd overall for average run meters with 101. He was averaging more than a line break per game. He was top 10 for tackle busts, scored 8 tries over the season, and contributed with 5 try assists as well, which is kind of a good balance of scoring and setting up. Yeah, one of those Chiefs players that just came to gold. Like the Chiefs seem to be able to have that magic touch with players this season to really get the most out of everybody they had. And yeah, Solomon is one of those guys. So that is the Dream Team, like I said, based solely on my previous selections for Dream Teams throughout the round. You guys can let me know who you think should have been there or who shouldn't be there. I'll just quickly go over a few of the honourable mentions, guys who were either very close or equal with some of these guys who got in. For the props, it was Tupou and Michael Alatoa. Both appeared, I think, 1 time fewer than Lowe and Dreyer. Tupou had crazy stats like try scoring, tackle bust, line breaks, that kind of thing. So he is just an amazing player with the ball. If it was going to be a bench, you'd have Creevy on the bench because he, from the Jaguares, was 2nd most seen from the Jaguares. His work rate is amazing. The locks, Guido Petty, his, I think, #1 guy easily by the amount of line-up ball he stole. And Lud Diacha, before he got injured, was having a really good season as well. Just all-round game was very good. Him and Snyman were a really potent combination for the Bulls in the 2nd row. Flankers and just loose forwards, there were so many, like Lapis Labiskakni with his tackles, Mafi from the Rebels. Lapis, by the way, was the Sunwolves. Mafi from the Rebels with his run meters. Timu from the Reds with his tackle busts. Matera from the Jaguares, his work rate. Jean-Luc Duprea from the Sharks was the #1 offload guy in the competition on average. Flip van der Walt with his work rate. Sikenbus Anoche, Malcolm van Staden. The list goes on. There were a lot of good loose forwards, kind of there or thereabouts with these guys. Scrum halves again. It was a really close call. I could have picked any of these guys. Weber, Gordon, Aaron Smith, Bertrand, all these guys had good seasons. Fly halves, these guys were all equal. I mean, Sanchez was 1 spot ahead of all these guys. McKenzie, tackle bust guy, despite his size. Rob Duprea with his points. Moinga with his class and way of running that Crusader show. Pollard for the Bulls and Parker from the Sunwolves with his goal kicking. All guys had very good seasons. Midfield, Michael Little again from the Sunwolves. I keep harping on about it, but I wish this guy was playing for the Blues with those turnovers and tackle busts. He's just a work rate guy that should have been coming through the Blues system and playing with some top talent, but had to go abroad to really express himself. Lucanio Am from the Sharks actually had better stats overall than Andre Esterhazen, but just didn't make my Dream Team quite as often. Outside backs, Naholo, Bridge, Naoravoro, and Galant all had very good attacking stats. Bridge, very good defensive ones as well. So, yeah, that's the Dream Team, plus a few honourable mentions. But like I said, you guys can let me know who you think should also be here, who shouldn't be here. And yeah, I'll do another video about some of those top performing guys and guys who had some stats they probably will want to forget in the coming days. But yeah, that's it for the Dream Teams for Super Rugby 2018. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.